Chris. I'm a math tutor at the Pierce College Center for Academic Success, and today's video is going to be on integer operations. And so, first things first, what are integers? Well, integers include all of the natural numbers, like 1, 2, 3, etc. And but this time we're also going to include 0 for integers, and all of the opposites of the natural numbers. So when I say opposites, I mean like opposite sign. So for example, if you had 6, the opposite would be -6. So if I'm including all the opposites of the natural numbers, then I'm going to go ahead and include -1 right here, -2, -3, and so on. And so yeah, that's what integers are. And so we're going to be talking about different ways to add them up, subtract them, multiply them, and divide them. Alright, let's talk a little bit about adding and subtracting integers. So, if we had something like 6 plus 2, you may already know that 6 plus 2 is going to give you 8. But what if you had -6 plus 2? You might already know the answer, but let's take a look at this on the number line. So, -6 is right here, right? I already have a number line over here. Here's 0, going positive directions over here, negative directions over here. If I start at -6, and I add 2, that means 2 to the right, right? Because adding is going to the right, subtracting is going to the left. So if I'm going to add 2, I'm going to go over 1, 2 to right here. And maybe I'll show you like this too. I went over 1, 2, and where do I end up? I end up at -4. Which is good because it turns out -6 plus 2 is indeed -4. And another way to look at this is whenever you're adding two numbers together and they don't have the same sign, what you're going to do is you're just going to take the number that's larger, the number that has a larger absolute value. You might not know what that means, but just don't look at the signs, and we can see that 6 is larger than 2, right? So we're going to take that 6 right here, and we're going to subtract the other one. And so 6 minus 2 is 4, right? But then we're going to keep the sign from whichever one of these was the larger one. So we said 6 was the larger one, and that had a negative on it, so we're going to keep that sign. So I know you're looking at, okay, this says 6 minus 2 is -4, but really we just used this trick. We did 6 minus 2 is 4, and then so here maybe I'll write it like this, and then that means that our answer is -4. Alright, let's take a look at another one. Let's say we had 4 minus 7. Well, really, if we see 4 minus 7, that's the same thing as saying 4 plus a -7. And that's because subtracting by a number is the same thing as adding by its opposite number. And so really, anytime you've ever seen subtraction, you're really seeing addition of a negative number. Same thing, they're interchangeable. And so once we have 4 plus -7, we could use that rule from before, right? Because I said if we're ever adding two numbers and they have the opposite sign, they have different signs, what you do is you take the larger one, right? So let's not look at the signs. Between 4 and 7, 7 is a bigger number, right? So we take the larger one, and we subtract the smaller one. Okay, 7 minus 4 is 3. And then we keep the sign from the larger one, right? That 7 had a negative on it, so when we put the 3 here, we're going to put a negative on it. And then, so same thing over here, 4 minus 7, that's -3. These are both the same thing. And if you take a look at a number line, it'll show us the same thing. If we start at 4 and we subtract 7, so remember, adding we went to the right, so subtracting we're going to go to the left. So subtracting 7, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right up to -3. And so those give us the same answer. And to sort of think about this a little bit more, you should know that this answer is going to be negative from the start, because let's say you had $4 in your pocket and your buddy's like, can I borrow $7? Well, no, right? You only have 4, so you can only really give him $4. But if you had like a bank account and you had $4 in your bank account and you took out 7, you'd end up with -$3 in your bank account, and you'd actually owe money to the bank at that point, right? So that's one way to look at that. Alright, and what if you had 6 minus 2? Well, this one might seem easy, you might already know the answer to that one, but let's try to take a look at it like we took a look at the other ones. So if you have 6 minus 2, remember that's the same thing as doing plus a -2, right? Because subtraction is just same thing as adding the opposite. Okay, and then we have 6 plus negative 2, that's a positive number and a negative number being added to each other. So we can use that rule that we used before. We take the larger of them, right? Between 6 and 2, 6 is larger. So put that one here, and then subtract that one. Okay, 6 minus 2 is 4. And then we keep the sign of the larger number. So 6 was the larger number, so that's positive. So our answer here, we just leave it positive. So I just wanted to show you that rule still works, regardless of what you're working with. And just want to try to explain how whenever you have a minus something, that's the same thing as adding the negative of it. Same thing goes for if you have minus negative 3, that's the same thing as plus a positive 3. Right? Because we had minus this, same thing as adding the opposite, and the opposite of negative 3 is 3. So that's a good one to know too. Subtracting a negative number, same thing as adding a positive number. Alright, let's take a look at one more. So, if we had negative 6 minus 2, remember we could rewrite that as negative 6 plus negative 2. And so what do? Earlier we've had adding a positive and a negative number, or a negative and a positive number. Now we're adding two negative numbers, right? So what is the rule here? Well, first let's take a look at it on the number line. If we start at negative 6, right, because over here it says negative 6, and we minus 2, that's 2 to the left, we get to negative 8. Okay, and so if we have a negative 8, that's our answer. Let's take a look at it, how we would do it, the more numerical way. So what you do when you're adding two numbers that have the same sign, right? Our two numbers are negative this time. If we're adding two numbers that have the same sign, you just take the two numbers, you add them up. 6 plus 2 is 8, right? And then you keep the sign that those two numbers had. So we'll put the 8 right here. But since our two numbers had that negative, they shared that negative sign, we'll put the negative right here too. And so, you can see using the number line we got negative 8, and then using this trick we also got negative 8. And this rule is the same as if you're doing normal addition with two positive numbers, right? Like you've probably already seen 3 plus 2 equals 5. And that's the same rule. You take the two numbers, they're both positive. So you do 3 plus 2, right, equals 5, and then you keep the sign that they both shared, positive, so you have positive 5. So really the same thing going on. If you have both the same sign, you just add the numbers up and you keep that sign. So you had negative 6 plus negative 2, that's just 6 plus 2 is 8, and then keep that negative. Alright, now we pretty much know all the rules for adding and subtracting integers. So let's try out some examples. These ones are a little trickier though. There's a lot of minus signs going on, a lot of them right next to each other. So over here, we have 5 minus negative 3. Remember we said that minus is, or when you're subtracting, that's the same thing as adding the opposite, right? So if we have 5 minus negative 3, we could just do 5 plus, and then the opposite integer of negative 3 is positive 3, right? So 5 plus 3. And you might already know 5 plus 3 is just going to give you 8. So that one looked a little confusing. It's a little easier than it looked, right? Okay, so over here, we have negative 10 minus a negative 4. A lot of negatives. So let's just do the same thing we did over there. Instead of doing negative 10 and subtracting negative 4, remember, instead of subtracting, we can add the opposite integer. And the opposite of negative 4 is a positive 4. So we've got negative 10 plus 4. And so now this is when we go to our one rule that we used. We're adding two numbers that are the opposite sign. So we take whatever one's larger, and just to be clear, not looking at the signs, the 10 is larger than 4, right? So we take that 10, we subtract the 4 from it, and 10 minus 4 is 6, right? So we go ahead and we put that 6 right here, but we keep the sign from whichever one we picked as larger. So we picked that 10, that had a negative on it, so we keep that sign. So the answer for that one is negative 6. Okay, now that we're pretty much done with the adding and subtracting integers, let's try out some examples. These ones are for you all to try on your own. So I'll read it out to you, and then I'll ask you to try it while you pause the video. So this one says negative 12 plus 15. So go ahead, pause the video really quick, try it on your own, and then resume the video and I'll show you how to do it. Alright, assuming you gave that a try, so negative 12 plus 15, we're adding two numbers with a different sign. So we take the larger one, right? That's the 15, right? Between 12 and 15, 15 is larger. We subtract the other one. 15 minus 12 is going to be 3. Okay, and then we give it the sign of the larger one. The sign on the 15 was positive, so we're going to give it a positive. It's just going to be positive 3. So that's the answer to that one. Hopefully you got the same, and if not, hopefully you saw why. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this one now. We have negative 3 minus 8. So once again, just pause the video really quick, try it out, and then resume when you're ready. Alright, so assuming you give that a try, negative 3 minus 8, remember we can change that to negative 3 plus negative 8. Right, because subtracting is the same thing as adding the opposite integer. And so right here, we're adding two numbers of the same sign, both negative, so we just take the numbers, we add them up. 3 plus 8, so I'll do that really quick up here. 3 plus 8 is going to give you 11. So we put an 11 here, right here. And we keep the sign that the two integers shared, right? The minus. So that one's minus 11. Okay? So let's look at this one over here. This one says 5 plus negative 7. So one more time, or we're going to have two more times. Once again, just go ahead and pause that video and give that one a try. Okay, assuming you pause it again. 5 plus negative 7. This one, usually our first step, like if we had 5 minus 7, we would change it to 5 plus negative 7, but this one's sort of already done for us, right? We're looking at a 5 and a negative 7 being added, both different signs. So we just take the larger one, right? Between 5 and 7, larger one is 7, so take that 7, we subtract the 5. Okay, 7 minus 5 is 2. So we put a 2 here, and then we keep the sign of that one we said was larger, right? So the 7 was the larger number, so we keep the minus from the 7. So this one was negative 2. Okay, last one. This says negative 4 minus negative 4. So go ahead and give that a try, and then resume the video when you're ready. Okay, so this one might be a little tricky. We can change this to negative 4 plus the opposite of negative 4, which is just positive 4. Right? So negative 4 plus 4. And this one might be a little weird because like, okay, I'm adding two numbers with different signs, but there's no larger one, right? They're both just 4s. Well, if you want to keep following that rule, you could just pick any of them, right? You could just take 4 minus 4. You could choose this 4 or this 4 to be the top one. You're just going to get 0 either way, right? And your answer here is 0, and 0 doesn't ever have a sign, so you don't really have to even worry about which sign to keep. But in reality, if you ever have a number minus that same number, your answer is always going to be 0. And also, you might have just been able to see negative 4 plus 4, that's going to be 0, right? That's kind of almost like saying, if you have this negative 4 right here and plus 4, I don't know if you can see over here. If you have negative 4 plus 4, you can actually rewrite this as 4, you can bring this 4 right here, and this minus 4, 4 minus 4. And 4 minus 4 might more obviously be equal to 0 too. So thanks for watching. I hope you catch the rest of our videos, and see you next time.